Thank you to the SAFETY4SEA team for inviting me to speak and inviting me to speak first. Being one of the first speakers today, Apo and I talked about what to cover in this opening presentation, and we've agreed that I'm going to cover a magazine format and look at several issues where I see the industry in terms of safety. As an industry, I feel that we have a short attention span to safety, and Apo's touched upon it just a moment ago. We tend to look at critical issues for 3 to 6 months at a time and then move on to another campaign, another topic. How often do you hear in your own companies, we're running a campaign on this or that? And a campaign, by its very definition, is a short-term communication program over an isolated topic. But as an industry, these campaigns, the lessons from these campaigns are not sticking. They're not embedding themselves in the way that we work. Over the next 10 minutes or so, I'm going to cover some of these areas of focus that we collectively need to work on. Again, as an industry, are we being complacent towards safety these days? You're instinctively saying, of course not. Safety is our #1 priority. But how much focus are you as safety leaders giving on safety these days when all your traffic lights are green, all your KPIs are green? Are you digging in deeper to find what lies beneath? Where's the red signals? Are you sitting back with a sense of victory when you achieve the highest safety scores for your ships and for your office? Or are you interrogating your leading events to see if that big incident is creeping up on you? Ahead of the conference, I reached out to many of my colleagues across the industry and asked them, what are your top 5 safety concerns right now? And I reached out to P&I loss prevention. I reached out to the energy majors. I reached out to chambers of shipping, both in Cyprus and in the UK. And I asked them, what is it that's keeping you awake at night? This is an amalgamation of all of those inputs, and there's an incredible alignment in what these different parts of our industry told me. It's noteworthy at this junction that according to Allianz Commercial, there was 28,000 incidents reported last year, the majority of which were machinery failure or damage. 11,500 incidents, in fact. And it's a point that I'm quite sure the marine insurers in the room are acutely aware of, given recent events and the magnitude of the claims that are likely to result. But that wasn't mentioned in their feedback. Also not on the list is fire safety. But it should be, because there have been 55 total losses in the last 3 years. And last year alone, there was 205 incidents resulting of fire safety. That's the highest number in a decade. Curiously, security was not on anybody's list either. Maybe this is because when we talk of security, we compartmentalize this away from general safety. But the reality is that over 100 vessels have been attacked in the Gulf of Aden and the Red Sea this year. And 4 seafarers, 3 of my colleagues have died. If I move on to the first of these hot topics that they did all align around was enclosed space entry. The numbers of seafarers dying as a result of enclosed space entry failures is frightening. Again, if you look at the IMO data from 1999 to August 2024, 42% of all incidents were on bulk carriers. Almost double the number that's on tankers at 23%. Now, if I look at more recent trends, and this is where I get a little bit of early audience participation, if I could just ask this table, and that table over there to stand up for a moment, please. You stand up, stand up, stand up. That's how many people died in 2021 on our ships, in our industry. If I can ask this table over here, stand up. This is collectively how many people died in 2022. And if I can ask this table here behind to stand up, this is how many people collectively died in 2023. Thank you. You can sit down. So as you can see, the problem is getting worse. It's not getting better. After IMO Resolution 1050 was entered force, end of 2011, 2012, there was a drop the following year in incidents. But then it increased consecutively year on year into 2018. In 2020, ISGOT 6 was published. Again, there was a drop the following year, and then year on year, it has increased again. The problem is getting worse. What we're doing today as an industry is not working. And these short-term campaigns after new publications are short-lived. In the latest incident published by Liberia Flag last month, it describes a deck cadet dying in the cargo hold bilges on a bulk carrier. And the autopsy report said the cause of death was toxic gas inhalation, most likely due to hydrogen sulfide. It's heartbreaking to read, and there are many more stories that Apo and the team publish in SAFETY4SEA. Many, many more stories. In fact, through one of the working groups I sit on, there was 2 fatalities last week that are yet to hit the IMO database. Despite the mandatory training, the underlying culture, the safety culture on board many vessels in our industry is not conducive with safe operations. On the bulk carrier side especially, there's a lack of risk appreciation of oxygen-depleting substances, toxic gases, and fumigation risks. And if you're sitting there doubting me about the cultural aspects of this, 68% of all officer fatalities are within the onboard leadership team. The chief officer, the safety officer, is the person that's dying the most. So what does that tell you about the safety culture on board those ships? In June this year, leading maritime organizations convened for the second joint working group. OCIMP are there, Intercargo are there, all the big players are there, trying to work out how to eliminate fatalities in enclosed spaces. Meanwhile, the industry continues to gather incidents and history from companies like yourselves. So I've been asked to be on this enclosed space entry working group, and if I could just ask, if you're sitting there thinking, we've had an incident, or we've had a near miss around enclosed spaces, please do send it to that email address you see on the screen right now. Your reports are anonymous, and they will be used by the working group to come up with new ways of working in our industry. Safe access. Several years ago, I unfortunately had to investigate a fatal accident through unsafe access. On the day of the incident, a colleague slipped off the bottom platform of an accommodation ladder and fell into the water and drowned. He was signing off the vessel. He'd been on the ship for 6 months. He was looking forward to going home to his family. But on that day, he was wearing a backpack. On that day, he wasn't wearing a life jacket. The launch that he was trying to get into was a one-man operated launch. And so a multitude of errors led to the fatality of one of my colleagues at the time. and it has since become a hot topic for me. Unfortunately, IMO does not keep records for fatalities through unsafe access, but pilot associations do. And since the start of last year, 10 pilots have died getting on and off vessels in our industry. The danger pilots have is that they don't see the full picture when they're in the launch trying to get on board your ships. They don't see what the point of access looks like, and this picture is particularly ironic, warning everybody to keep the pilot access area clear of obstructions. Some of the boarding arrangements are just downright idiotic. And there's many, many more examples of this if you go to the Dangerous Ladders Facebook page. Despite campaigns by Port State Control, despite industry campaigns through safety partners, despite new regulations, new placards, new posters, new instructions, we're not penetrating this learning to the men and women on our ships that are responsible for these arrangements. The message is not getting through. There's a lack of intervention culture, and bad practices like backpacks and not wearing life jackets is just being tolerated on a day-to-day basis. And on the subject of campaigns, if you're not aware, IMPA, the International Pilots Association, launched a campaign on the 1st of October to run to the 15th of October. And if you visit their website, you'll see statistics showing trends exactly the same as what I just showed you on the screen about enclosed spaces. So be aware that that campaign is running. 2 major fires in the space of a week in August, the MSC Cape Town 3 and the YM Mobility, have put container ships and safety back in the news. While these investigations are still ongoing, the Ningbo authorities have confirmed that in the case of the YM Mobility, there was lithium-ion batteries on board and a range of highly flammable organic compounds. Fire is a major cause of loss. Like I said, there's 205 incidents just last year. As these vessels have increased in size, the adequacy of firefighting arrangements has come into question. The exact cause of many container fires is uncertain, although misdeclared cargoes, hazardous goods, chemicals, batteries are often a contributing factor. With container vessels now reaching 20,000 TEU, the potential for loss is huge. And the insurance industry is calling for improved regulations. The IMO is considering this based on the research that EMSA have done last year. As I said earlier, a huge number of fires have been reported. The second year in a row where the numbers have topped 200. So 200 in 2022, 205 in 2023. Several of these incidents made the news were RoRos and PCTCs. The Grande Costa de Avrio in the US last summer, 2 firefighters died. The Fremantle Highway, a few weeks later, 1 crew member died. And while both of these incidents coincided with much industry talk about electric vehicles and lithium-ion batteries, in the case of the Avrio incident, they've confirmed that there were no EVs or lithium-ion batteries on board. However, it remains a major concern to ferry operators, RoRos, PCTCs, how we manage these vehicles on our vessels. With this, there's definitely a need across our industry for a joined-up approach, and most importantly, to give our seafarers the training and the equipment that they need. With this joined-up approach in mind, and as chair of the UK Chamber of Shipping's Health and Safety Committee, we created a working group comprising of members of the Chamber, experts from a range of industries, to gather knowledge, experiences from these fires, consider what information and training was needed, and what regulations will be needed in the future to keep our seafarers safe. We've created this publication, and It's a paper that you see on the screen covering the topics. And it's put together by the Chamber, the Maritime Coast Guard Agency in the UK, Newcastle University, and the UK government's SOSRIP. It's free of charge. If you're in this sector, please download it. Very quickly, staying with the Ro-Ro ferries. Again, another piece of work that I've done with the UK Chamber is around vehicle deck safety. In July 2021, the Cyprus flag vessel Clipper Pennant suffered a fatal accident when the bosun on board was crushed by a semi-trailer moving into its space. Why do I mention this case 3 years later? The UK MAIB is about to publish the report on this, and if you're in the sector, be aware there are many recommendations being published in that paper to industry. And again, we've done a lot of work to give guidance to the industry. So if you're in the ferry sector, Ro-Ro sector, please do look for this document. It's free of charge. You can download it anytime you want. The 10 golden rules for vehicle deck safety we've published into the Together in Safety initiative, so you don't have to go hunting for it. It's all there. My final topic, and I know I'm running out of time, is I've talked about lagging events. And the challenge from Apple at the beginning was that, are we greenwashing matters? Are we ignoring safety in favor of environmental rules and regulations? Has it dropped off the table? Well, if you look at some of the leading indicators from HILO, they've studied 2,500 vessels, tankers, containers, and bulk carriers. And by looking at small leading events and looking at the lagging events, you can see that 4,700 events, leading events, led to loss of containment of conventional fuels. This led to 70 fires and explosions and 1 fatality. If you scale that up to the maritime industry as a whole, using the HILO data as a representative sample, the numbers are staggering. The data, the statistics, say that there will be, every 3 months, there's a fatality that results from mishandling of conventional fuels. So where does that put us when we look to new fuels, LNG, ammonia? Thankfully, the Centre of Maritime Decarbonisation has published a paper on this in August, but it's more rules, more guidance. Implementation and training is what's needed. So I'm just going to conclude by saying thank you very much to everybody. I hope you understand that safety is not a colour, it's not a scorecard, it's not a 3-month campaign. We owe it to our men and women on our ships to ensure that we remain focused on safety, put it back on the table, so that the lessons that we're learning stick. We keep our people safe, well, and free from harm to return home to their families. And we must not lose focus. So this conference is our moment to instill some fresh thinking into these vital areas. And I'm really excited to listen to the panelists and what other innovations they're excited about. So thank you very much, everybody.